Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Slater will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. J. Matthew Pinson as our pastor of the day. Dr. Pinson is a native of Pensacola, Florida. He served as a pastor in various Free Will Baptist churches for 12 years in Alabama, Connecticut, and Georgia. He continues today as one of the spiritual leaders of the National Association of Free Will Baptist. Since 2002, Dr. Pinson has served as the president of Welch College in Gallatin, Tennessee. Among other earned degrees, he holds a master's degree from Yale University and a doctorate from Vanderbilt. Dr. Pinson has published numerous scholarly and popular articles, and he has authored or edited 9 books. President Pinson led the monumental task of designing, building, and relocating the entire campus community from Midtown Nashville to its new home in Sumner County in 2017. Matt and his wife of 29 years, Melinda, live on the Welch campus. He and Melinda met while both students at Yale. Their 2 grown children, Anna and Matthew, are currently students at Welch College. I'm pleased to welcome my Christian brother, colleague in education, and my friend to open our session in prayer.
Let us pray. Oh God, we thank you for bringing us to this place. We thank you that you have created us in your image and likeness as thinking, feeling, acting beings, persons who have the capacity for rational thought and judgment and reason, and who can be compassionate to each other and merciful, people who have been endowed with the gift of free choice and free will to come together in such a body as this and deliberate together. And we thank you for giving us a sense of right and wrong and a sense of compassion toward each other. And we pray that you will help this body today, that you will bring peace to this body. And we thank you for this august gathering of the people's representatives in the state of Tennessee. We thank you for bringing them to this place through your providence at this important time, for such a time as this, to do your work as the people's representatives. And so we pray that you will give them wisdom. We pray that they will act justly and pursue truth and have bowels of compassion and mercy for each other as they seek to show respect and give each other dignity and worth that is theirs because they are created in your image. And so be with this body and bless them and keep them and make your face to shine upon them and be gracious unto them and give them peace this day and throughout this session. Through Christ I pray. Amen.
Representative Slater, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 85 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring Representative White. You're recognized in the well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the Sergeant at Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, escort the guests to the well, please. Representative White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members I appreciate your attention this morning. I invited some longtime friends this morning, and I just want to make an introduction. This is Mackie, Kaylor, his wonderful wife, Leanne, who we affectionately call Lucy, daughter Macy, and her husband, Andrew, Macy and Andrew Fox. And so Mackie and I have known each other for a long time, but for my introduction, from Memphis to Music Row to Muletown, Mackie Kaylor is a longtime professional songwriter, independent recording artist, and entertainer. Mackie has a phenomenal six-piece band comprised of some of the top musicians in the music industry. He has had his songs performed recently on the Grand Ole Opry and various networks worldwide, and has performed his songs at the Ryman Auditorium and top venues across the nation. In December of 2022, Mackie was the featured artist for the Columbia, Tennessee Christmas tree lighting for thousands of people in the town square. Later that month, Mackie was featured in millions of households on networks including the Family Channel, RFD, Heartland, and others, with a performance of his original Christmas song, They Saw a King, which has been recorded by various artists. In addition to his work, many of the Hall of Fame songwriters, as well as those heard on hundreds of commercial jingles over the last 20 years. And most of all, Mackie is a very grateful, lifelong Tennessean. Members, besides all of that accomplishments of Mr. Mackie Kaylor, the most important part is I was Mackie's 7th grade science teacher. Which is why he chose music as a career. And then years later, after he graduated in the 1980s, we had a business and he worked with me. But every afternoon at 3 o'clock, we would stop everything and watch 30 minutes of the Andy Griffin Show, and Barney talking about nip it in the bud. Well, I'm so proud to have he and his family here today. He got tied up on Interstate 40 and they couldn't get the keyboard set up. So he said he is going to sing his song for us this morning, a cappella, which is Tennessee in My Dreams. Right? Well, you are recognized, Mr. Kaylor. I also told him I would sing backup, but he said no real quick.
I'm so honored to be here this morning. Thank you for allowing me to sing my song for you. As a lifelong songwriter from Memphis to Music Row for many years, and a lifelong passionate advocate of our glorious state, I'm so thankful to be here this morning. And, Tennessee and Nashville and Music Row are where dreams come true. And it would be a dream for me one day to have a state song. So that's been a long time dream of mine. So I am very thankful that you're even considering such a thing. So thank you for letting me be here this morning. I appreciate it. Normally I would have my keyboard or a full band, but I'm just going to do this for you just like this. So soon I will slumber and there we'll meet again. Then I'll watch with wonder scenes of yesterday begin. Good night, you'll whisper softly in the breeze. Then I'll drift away with your memories. Sweet Tennessee, you're still home to me. Lord knows there ain't no place on this earth I'd rather be. Like a long lost lover, there's no other for me. Tonight I'll hold you close and see Tennessee in my dreams. And as the sun sets to melt beyond the shore, I'll toss all of my regrets into the deep forevermore. So long to should have beens, farewell to sad goodbyes. I'll be home again when I close my eyes. Sweet Tennessee, you're still home to me. Lord knows there ain't no place on this earth I'd rather be. Like a long-lost lover, there's no other for me. Tonight I'll hold you close and see you, Tennessee, in my dreams. Contented in my restless soul, I'm resigned to be a gypsy with a song, far from where I belong. Oh, until I sleep, then sweet Tennessee, you're still home to me. Lord knows there ain't no place on this earth I'd rather be. Like a long-lost lover, there's no other for me. Tonight I'll hold you close and see you, Tennessee, Tennessee in my dreams, sweet Tennessee in my dreams. Thank you.
Representative White.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that very much. Appreciate y'all being here so much and for writing such a wonderful song for our great state. Mr. Speaker, will you mind taking a picture with us?
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant of Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant at Arms, please invite the guests to the chamber, please. Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When someone swears the oath to preserve and protect, it's one of the most selfless acts an individual can take. On the morning of March 27th, our first responders lived up to the meaning of every word they swore, running toward an active shooter situation at an elementary school. The world saw how well-trained officers of the Metro Nashville Fire Department and Metro Nashville Police, facing a life-threatening situation, acted with a sense of bravery and precision that reflects the quality of training and the quality of our officers protecting our city every day. I, like many of you, watched the body cam footage, and saw the officers running as fast as they could towards danger, knowing that every second they delayed could mean another child could lose their life. It's a true honor to recognize these heroes who put their lives on the line to help save our children. I hope their sense of bravery and commitment to service serves as a reflection point for this body. As we contemplate measures to protect our community and our children from senseless acts of violence, I urge this body to act now, this session. Inaction is not an option. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Drake, the 5-officer team who entered the building, Sergeant Jeff Mathis, Detective Michael Calizzo, Officer Rex Engelbert, Detective Zachary Plessy, Detective Ryan Cagle. Also from the Nashville Fire Department is Chief Swan, EMS Chief Tommy Gilmer, Paramedic Trevor Skira, EMS District Chief Stephen Spurlock, Deputy Cherry Tomlinson, Engineer Justin Agnew, and we're also joined by members of the Nashville Department of Emergency Communications. Kristen Mullen, who's the day shift operations manager, Sabrina Jackson, the supervisor, Kate Miner, Matthew Caleb, Amber Doss, Kay Mulligan, Aubrey Warnick, George Allen, Courtney Lehman, and Haley Joseph. And Mr. Speaker, if you'll allow Chief Drake and Chief Swan to say a few words.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Speaker, Representative Freeman, for recognizing us and members of the legislature. March 27th was a day we had trained for and prepared for years, but it was a day that we were hoping would never happen. What we saw that day was a tragedy, but also in the dark of all the moments that were going on, there was a lot of light. There was the Department of Communications, who began fielding 30+ calls and getting as much information as possible to give it out to our men and women of the fire department and the police department so we would know exactly what we were responding to. Thank you to members of the fire department for transporting and being there and being able to triage victims and help those that needed help as well. And of course, thank you to our police department, who, as I've said, after Uvalde, we would go in. We would not wait. And these officers went in immediately. There's a lot of heroes standing here today, but this all signifies the one team that we are. Department of Communications, the Nashville Fire Department, and the Police Department, trying to keep Nashville and Tennessee safe. So thank you for recognizing us.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Freeman, and all the body. As Chief Drake has just said so eloquently, we work as a team, and I'm just so proud to be in a department that really can work together as a unit. When we look at all the emergencies that we've had throughout the last few years, one thing really shows or shines a light. When emergencies happen and disasters happen, it forces us to put away our differences and our ideologies, and we come together to take care of the problem that we're facing. Today, you see a small example, great leadership from the police department, what they've done, set a benchmark for the nation. The fire department, all the great work is done there. And then 911, it all starts there. And many others that's not here today, from the Office of Emergency Management to NDOT to parks to so many schools, so many people came together, and that's what it takes. Sometimes we gotta lay aside our differences, come together and handle business, and that's what we did. So again, we appreciate you recognizing us for doing what we swear to do. So thank you all.
Representative Freeman.
Mr. Speaker, would you join us in the well for a photo?
Welcoming and honoring Representative Wright at Hicks of Hawkins' desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd like for Laura Grace Jenkins, please stand. University of Tennessee student, Knoxville, has been an intern this year, a half a day in the District 19 office, a half a day in the Lieutenant Governor's office. So she knows a little bit about how it works from top down. LG, I appreciate your working in the office. And the reason I'm standing here, members, is because she is a constituent of Chairman Hicks. Would you like to say? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like our members to welcome to the House floor my shadow for the day. If you'll stand, this is Alex Tedderton, and it's appropriate that she's here today. Her father is a lieutenant with the Metro Nashville Police Department, and so let's give Alex a hand. Alex is a junior at Dayspring Academy in Sumner County, and she has high aspirations. She would like to be a constitutional lawyer, and she's seeking an appointment to the Air Force Academy. So good to have Alex with us today on the floor of the House. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Jack and Jill of America Incorporated Day on the Hill. Jack and Jill of America was incorporated as a membership organization of mothers with children from ages 2 through 19. They're dedicated to the nurturing future African-American leaders by providing social, cultural, and educational opportunities. Today, mother members, middle school and high school teens representing the 6 Tennessee chapters have convened for a nonpartisan day of learning and service at the Capitol. The 6 chapters are Chattanooga, Jackson, Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville, and Williamson County. As you can see, the children have traveled across the state and are accompanied by prominent officers from the state of Georgia, their regional legislative chair, former Georgia House Representative D. Dawkins Hagler, their regional director, Darlene Whittington, and their national president, Cornisha Brown. They're looking for a great day of learning and service. So please make them feel welcome. They're over there. Please stand up and wave your hand. So thank you, and please make them feel welcome. And one last thing, the lady who coordinates this today is Cecilia Conley. She's works for the Nashville, Metro Nashville Public School System, and she's done a wonderful job of coordinating this event for them, and thank you very much.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, my office, we have a wonderful intern that we love, Jalen, and she wanted to bring her mom and grandma today. So would y'all welcome Mrs. Toby and her grandma, Mrs. Kathy, right up here in this balcony.
Leader Lamberth.
Members, please rise for a moment, if you will. We have one of our own here that supports all of us in ways that many of us never see, but Donald Haggard, who is with LIS for the last 25 years, his mother passed away, Miss Patricia Ann Staley Haggard. And Mr. Speaker, if I may ask for just a moment of silence for the Haggard family, specific for Donald Haggard, as he mourns the loss of his mother. Thank you, Speaker, and to the Haggard family, you are in our prayers.
Representative Kiesling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Chairman Williams, together we want to honor or welcome Mr. Mason Copeland. He's one of our honorary pages today. Mason, let's put him, members, let's get him to work. Now, Mason is a senior at Upperman High down up at Baxter. And so he's accompanied today by his father, Dane. Mason's plan is following graduation this next month, he's going to head to Tennessee Tech with a major in ag business. So if you would, Chairman Williams and I would appreciate a warm house welcome to both these gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we present House Bill 138 by my seatmate later today, which is naming designating roads and bridges across the state, we've got an honored family from Unicoi County. So along with Representative John Holtzclaw, myself, the daughter of Mr. Carl Jones, who's going to have an interchange named after him as the mayor of Rocky Bottom, which is a tremendous honor for the family. We have Renee Jones Rogers with us today. If we could honor and say hello to Renee, let's make her welcome.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise and honor one of our pages today that hails from Sumner County. He hails from, we represent Leader Lamberth's district. His name is Nolan Smith. Nolan is a fifth grader at Liberty Creek. He has told me he likes to wrestle and he plays flag football. And he is here today with his grandmother, Katie Beasley, who is just over my right shoulder. So please, folks, welcome him as our page today, Nolan Smith from Sumner County.
Representative Towns.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Members, top of the morning to the members. Members, I'd like to share something with you that I think is very significant. One of our members, there's a gentleman sitting on this House floor that has done something that used to be commonplace back in the day, but it's no longer commonplace. He's actually worked at a place for 34 years. You know, back in the day, you get to go watch a little bit of change and a pension. You know, pensions have gone the way of the dinosaur now. So he's getting ready to retire. He's going to retire after 34 years at Oak Ridge National Labs. I affectionately call him the mad scientist. Not the scientist, the mad scientist, because he is a scientist. He looks like one of our famous personalities on TV. But I want you all to help me congratulate him, and we all take up a collection and get him a rocking chair and some bubble gum. Sam McKenzie out of the eastern part of the state. Stand up, Sam. Stand up, Sam. So if he leaves early today, and I encourage that he does, they're doing a retirement celebration for him, so y'all excuse him, please. He got to get back. Doesn't need to be late for his actual retirement ceremony. But to that end, young folk need to recognize that you need to do a 401k because you won't have a pension. Congratulations, Sam.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like all members to please rise in memory of the wife of former State Representative Timothy Hill. Timothy Hill's wife, Charity, passed away this week. I ask that you pray for the family and keep them in your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Speaker. I just wanted to wish my son, Kent Michael Carringer, a very happy birthday. That's tomorrow. And what a blessing his life has been to his father and I. So if he hears about this, he'll probably want to choke me. But anyway, happy birthday, Kent. 36.
Representative
Speaker, I don't know if you heard that all the way up there, but I am going to call him out. Chairman Doggett just said, how old is he going to be? And I had to think a minute, and I said 36, and he said, you could be my mom. So thank you, Chairman.
Representative Himmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wanted to recognize one of my longtime best friends, Erin McAnally, who is here today visiting from LA, and one of her good friends, Chelsea Crow. Thank you.
Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you would join Representative Curtis Johnson and Representative Glenn today. We will be attending a memorial service later today for the 9 Fort Campbell soldiers that were killed just over 2 weeks ago. And would you take a moment let's take a moment of silence to remember those families today as we go through that memorial service. Thank you.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know we've already acknowledged D. Dawkins Hagler, but if the Jack and Jill of America team and the young folk, would you all stand? Their national president is here. They weren't in the gallery earlier. Welcome. Would you all make them feel welcome? I got a kid.
Representative Sparks.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to wish my wife, Felicia, a happy anniversary of 34 years tomorrow. She was 15, I was 19. We started dating, and folks said we'd never make it, but by the grace of God, we've made it. So happy anniversary, Felicia.
Any further welcome and honoring? Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to say never pass a moment of honoring your elders. My seatmate, member, Colonel, Chairman Whitson, had a birthday this week. Happy birthday, Colonel Whitson.
Anyone else? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of resolutions.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing in line that has to be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all resolutions line over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills, Senate bills on first consideration.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate bills 397, 711, 722, 806, 815, 944, 952, 966, 967, 972, 979, 986, 1007, 1023, 1043, 1049, 1056, 1059, 1069, 1070, 1076, 1111, 1119, 1143, 1154, 1230, 1231, 1279, 1284, 1345, and 1357 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of the companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration, petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration, keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves passage of the consent calendar, probably second, Mr. Clerk. Any objections have been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no objections filed.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we're voting on the consent calendar. All members favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Travis, aye. Dixie, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Having received the constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. Most for consider table. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call first bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 275 by Chair Lady Hazelwood relative to exchange programs for needles and hypodermic syringes. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 20292.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 292, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0292 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves passage of Senate Bill 292 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Ms. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, back in 2017, we passed legislation in this body to allow for syringe service exchange programs in the state. Since then, this bill has saved lives and it's gotten people into treatment. It has eliminated or reduced outbreaks of HIV and Hep C, which are transmitted by used needles often. This bill today simply makes the statewide, makes the rules for where these syringe exchange programs can be located the same statewide, and that is within, has to be more than 1,000 feet from a school or church. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Hazelwood renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Chairman, does the current program not prohibit them being more than 1,000 feet from a school or church? And so is that why you're bringing this change, or what precipitates this change?
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The current program allows for 1,000 feet in metropolitan areas, but 2,000 feet in urban or in rural areas. And actually 30% of the new participants in these programs are actually in rural areas. That's where we have a large and growing problem. So this would just allow those programs to be better located so that our rural folks who have these kind of issues and problems can be served as well as those in the metros.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not vote for this bill the first time because I really don't want to see needle exchange programs in Tennessee like they have in San Francisco and other cities. And I would welcome seeing the data that maybe this has been beneficial in Tennessee. And I don't think that we're out of control as we have seen in other states. But I look forward to seeing data on this program. So thank you.
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have data I'm happy to share with the representative. I can tell you that those folks who participate in these programs are 5 times more likely to enter treatment because it's not just a simple exchange of needles. The program includes medical treatment and it includes referrals to wraparound services. And we do have indications where there were outbreaks of Hep C or HIV that would have been spread if this program wasn't in place and clean needles weren't provided. So we do have evidence-based that this does work.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 292, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 69, 16 nays, 6 present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 292, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most for serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 981 by Chairman Faison relative to Tennessee Emergency Medical Services Board. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 669.
Chairman Faison moves substitute conform Senate Bill 669, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 669 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Faison moves passage of Senate Bill 669 on third and final consideration. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Faison renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 669 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does anyone wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 669 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 137 by Chairman Howell and others relative to license plates. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 142.
Chairman Howell moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 142, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 142 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Howell moves passage of Senate Bill 142 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vital, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Roll to the heel of the amendments.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1 filed as House Amendment 2.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Roll to the hill.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 3 by Chairman Howell. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 3 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 4 by Chairman Crawford. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, move to withdraw. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 5 by Chairman Howell. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Howell moves adoption of amendment number 5, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Any objection to the question? We're on the board. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Barrett, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Amendment number 5 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings us back to the heel of the amendments. House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Vital, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1 filed as House Amendment 2.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, move to withdraw. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the annual transportation omnibus bill for specialty license plates. There are 38 amendments that make up this bill brought to the Transportation Committee by you, the members. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Howell renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Chairman. Just want to note that we look at this as merely ceremonial at times, but what the chairman is carrying actually affects the safety issues on our highways. One of the amendments that he was so kind enough to add is for look twice, save a life. Look twice, save a life. That's so you can stay alert and aware of the motorcycle riders and bike riders who are on the road. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the work that you do.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor, Senate Bill 142 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, any member wish to change their vote? Moon eye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 98, no nays.
Senate Bill 142, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 138 by Chairman Howell and others relative to transportation infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 144.
Chairman Howell moves substitute form Senate Bill 144, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 144 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Howell moves passage of Senate Bill 144 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Vital, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1 filed as House Amendment 2.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment, oh, no, I'm sorry. I move to adopt and I defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves adoption of amendment number 2, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 2 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the annual omnibus transportation bill for the naming of roads and bridges. There are 53 amendments that make up the bill brought to the Transportation Committee by you, the members. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Howell renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor, Senate Bill 144 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does anyone wish to change their vote? Lafferty, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 98, no nays.
Senate Bill 144, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 802 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh relative to utility facility safety enforcement. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 952.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves substitute and form Senate Bill 952, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 952 on third and final consideration.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves passage of Senate Bill 952 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill. We're going to move to adopt and refer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is from the Tennessee Public Utility Commission and the 811 Board. It amends the Underground Utility Damage Act to clarify excavation practices and procedures for underground facilities. With that, I renew my motion.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I support the bill sponsor, but one thing I wanted to bring up is I've received a lot of calls from my constituents for these underground utilities, and I'm all about continuing to build out our infrastructure in our state. Obviously, very important that we continue to do that and expand access. But unfortunately, a lot of the utilities and the contractors they use are going into people's property, and I understand there's easements, and digging and creating a lot of destruction and not adequately fixing that when they leave. And I understand this bill doesn't necessarily apply to that, but I just want to bring that up because I think that's something we really need to continue to look at and enforce when it comes to this particular part of the statute, because we should not let homeowners have their property treated in such a way that it defaces their homes and the way that they try to take care of their own personal property. And again, I understand that we have certain easements, and this is an important thing in our state to continue to build our infrastructure. But again, I just continue to receive multiple calls from constituents who are upset with the way that the utilities, and oftentimes it's outsourced, it's private contractors who are leaving these properties in this condition. So we need to hold them accountable and make sure that these efforts are done in a way that does not interfere with people's homes and cause damage. But I will be voting for the bill, but sponsor, hopefully we can work on that in the future, and these entities will hear my plea to treat our folks better in the state of Tennessee. Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you very much. I renew my motion.
Representative Marsh renews his motion. Representative Towns, nope. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 952 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Hardaway, aye. Capley, aye. Breaking aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 98, no nays.
Senate Bill 952 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declared passed without objection. The motion reads series table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 921 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, relative to contracts. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 975.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 975, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 975 on third and final consideration.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves passage of Senate Bill 975 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. We're going to move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of House Amendment Number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting House Amendment Number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill simply increases the maximum current amount in state law that the manager of a municipal or county electric system or energy authority can purchase without board approval from $50,000 to $100,000. This allows them to buy quickly on products that are in short supply and the supply chain problems. With that, I'll renew my motion.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor Yield.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh. Yep.
I do.
Representative Shaw.
Is this going to be statewide application for all utilities or just for some specific ones?
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
It's going to be for, it's brought to us by the Tennessee Municipal Electric Power Association, and it's going to include county and municipal electric systems all over the state.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask you that because I've got a private act, in fact, for my utility to be able to increase in their purchasing, and I was just wondering, would this take care of that automatically, or would we need to run that private act?
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Is your local authorities, is it a electrical utility? This should take care of it, but we need to check after this. I'll help you check on that, but I'm pretty sure it does.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 975 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 98, no nays.
Senate Bill 975 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declared passed by objection. The motion reads series table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1376 by Chairman Reagan and others, relative to higher education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 817.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 817, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 817 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 817 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized. Chairman White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment, so I move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to strengthen the prohibition on the divisive concepts that are part of TCA 49-719 and promote freedom of expression and educational excellence. The impact is to keep colleges about advancing knowledge and not advancing personal, political, or social agendas. It establishes a transparent system for identifying and tracking alleged violations and complaints concerning these divisive concepts, and allows for any student or staff member to file such a complaint, requires the institution to maintain public records of violations on their website, redacted to avoid violating FERPA. The prohibition is to ensure that institutional bias or favoritism among student groups is not manifested. Specifically, it requires that peaceful, lawful facility use must be open to all recognized student groups. Student-invited guest speakers may not be denied solely on race, religion, or nonviolent political ideology. Opposition campus groups may not veto other institutionally recognized peaceful campus groups or their invited speakers. Institutional fees must be the same for all student groups properly using campus spaces, and institutions may deny obscene displays or events. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I stand ready for questions and renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield to a series of questions?
Chairman Reagan.
I yield.
Representative Jones.
Thank you. Representative Reagan, do you not believe that college students are mature enough to talk about issues like race and systemic racism, some of the concepts you want to ban and have tried to prohibit being discussed at the college level?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the representative, I believe in God. All else is settled by facts and data.
Representative Jones.
Mr. Speaker, he didn't. That's not an answer. Let's try again. Do you believe that college students are mature enough to handle conversations about systemic racism and the history of oppression in America that you're trying to prohibit under this bill?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have addressed your question already, sir.
Representative Jones.
So we're playing not answer. Okay. Representative Reagan, what type, you call this the freedom of expression bill, but it's prohibiting concepts from being discussed freely on college campuses, and it's instituting a rogue reporting process where students can report professors for teaching this list of 16, 17 issues. Can you explain the impetus for this bill? What is the origin? What motivated you to write this bill? It seems like it's based off of white fragility, fears of teaching the truth of history. What was your reason for writing this bill?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was brought to me by a dean of college education who I worked with, in addition to another university also contributed to this bill. That was my motivation, sir.
Representative Jones.
Can you name that person? Who asked you to bring this legislation?
Chairman Reagan.
I would prefer not to, sir. That's between me and the person who brought it to me. If you wish to discuss that in private, I'd be glad to do it.
Representative Jones.
Thank you. Representative Reagan, you grew up at a time where America was segregated. Under this bill, we can't teach that history. So I'm just trying to figure out, how will we be honest about our history if you're prohibiting any concepts about America's racist history? It says here we can't talk about any type of unequal system that ascribe character traits, values, moral, ethical codes, privileges onto a certain race. You say that we can't talk about the history of struggle in America. Can you explain how we would talk about these issues and why you're so fearful about even college students discussing them?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your assertion is incorrect, sir. It does not prohibit discussing these.
Representative Jones.
Representative Reagan, this is under prohibited concepts. These are things that, according to this bill, under present law, the following concepts are defined as divisive concepts. And under this law, there's a reporting process where students can report professors for teaching these concepts. This sounds like fascism. This sounds like authoritarianism. This does not sound like democracy or freedom. And so again, this bill is very troubling to anybody who believes in constitutional rights and who believes in America's promise of freedom of expression. You are targeting professors and college students from talking about race and from talking about the history of America. I think it is shameful what you're trying to do. And I'm trying to get an answer as to see what is the origin of this bill, but you're being evasive because I think that you don't even know what the purpose of this bill is, besides to feed into this racist narrative that you've been promoting all session. And so my question to you,
Representative Jones, that's a personal attack and you're out of order. Please refrain from making those claims when you're on the bill. Thank you. Continue, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is not a personal attack. It's a matter of fact.
Representative Jones, you made a direct comment to the representative accusing him of something. That is a direct attack. I would ask you to refrain from doing that and stick to the bill, please. Representative Jones.
Thank you. Representative Reagan, do you believe that it is racist to prohibit concepts on systemic racism in the history of America?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, my belief is in God. I settle other things with facts and data. The fact of the matter is, sir, this bill is not racist. It is not unconstitutional.
Representative Jones.
We keep bringing up God, but God says in Isaiah 10, woe to those who pass unjust laws that hurt the poor and rob them of their rights. And so stop using God to justify your bigotry. Stop using God to justify hatred and racism. Stop using God to put
Representative Jones, you are out of order. You're out of order. That's the third time you've accused a member of doing something or being something on the House floor. That's the third. Chairman Reagan, would you like to respond?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Jones, last chance.
Mr. Speaker, this member has consistently invoked God to justify this unjust, immoral, extreme racist law. I was merely trying to respond because
Thank you, Representative Jones. Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. This is a deeply concerning bill because it is continuing a pattern of practice that is harmful to all people. When you begin to attack education and educational institutions that seek to tell the truth about racism, sexism, these other quote unquote divisive concepts, when you try to control what a person thinks, then you are assuming the role of God rather than allowing the freedom of thought that built American educational institutions. I'll read some of this bill because I've got some folks here from Memphis and folks who are watching who need to see what the Tennessee General Assembly is calling divisive in our time. 1, race or sex is inherently superior or inferior to another race or sex. An individual, by virtue of an individual's race or sex, is inherently privileged. So we can't talk about white privilege. Racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. Subconsciously, I'm assuming sponsor means we can't talk about biases, which we all have. An individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment because of the individual's race or sex. An individual's moral character is determined by the individual's race or sex. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. This is to prevent white folks in particular for being told they had anything to do with enslavement. This is an individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or another form of psychological distress solely because of the individual's race or sex. A meritocracy which does not exist because a society that committed genocide against Native Americans, enslaved Black African American people for over 250 years, cannot be a meritocracy because we didn't all start at the same place. But you will not be able to say a meritocracy is inherently racist or sexist or designed by a particular race or sex to oppress another sex, despite the fact that in the United States of America's Constitution that we all swear an oath on, Black people were considered 3/5 of a person. Only rich white men could vote, not women. But you tell us that those things we wouldn't be able to talk about. The state of the United States is fundamentally or irredeemably racist or sexist. And that's the part I would like to talk about, if you don't mind. And the reason I'll vote against this legislation is actually because I do believe this state, this country is redeemable. But it is not going to be redeemed or resurrected if we allow the status quo to persist that silences different ideas. It will not be redeemed if we do not have the courage to look at ourselves and our institutions in the face and demand that they do better, it will not be redeemed if we operate business as usual and not do the work of justice. America is redeemable. The state of Tennessee is redeemable. But if we do not do the work of repenting through true education, by telling the truth, or as Memphian Ida B. Wells says, shining the light of truth upon our institutions and upon our lived experiences, which has made it much more likely for you to stand there than for me. If we do not tell the truth about our past and our present injustices, the state of Tennessee, the United States of America will not be redeemed. This is the work that we should be committing to, not banning people's ability to think critically about how we got to where we are, because we're trying to preserve a status quo that has hurt us. But I've got good news. No matter what you do, people always rise.
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member's assertions are deceptive and incorrect. However, I'll let it sit at that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Chaplain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question called. There's objection. We're on the board. All those in favor of previous question, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does every member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 68, 26 nays.
Previous question prevails. Let the journal reflect Representative Whitson is excused. Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to point out the contradiction, Mr. Chairman, that we're having a vote on a bill to limit speech, and we move to...
We're under point of order if you have a point of order question, but you can't make a statement. We're on the voting. Do you have a point of order question? Yes, Chairman Clemens.
My point of order question, Mr. Speaker, is if we're going to vote on a bill that limits speech and ideas and the teaching of those ideas, why are we cutting off debate on that very bill?
Mr. Clerk, can you read the House rules on previous question, please?
Mr. Speaker, the previous question shall only be admitted when demanded by 2/3 of the members present and may be applied to the main motion, the main question and amendment, the main question and amendment to the amendment. If the question prevails on the main motion, its effect shall be to preclude all future amendments and terminate all debate.
Chairman Clemens, you have a question on that?
My question is, why are we going to allow that on such an important issue of debate in this House of Representatives? And why are we allowing people to call the question when debate is necessary?
Chairman Clemens, you understand the House rules that if someone calls for previous question, that's a non-debatable motion that goes to the board for previous question. That's what happens when someone calls previous question. You have a question on that? Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The complaint I'm hearing is that that was not debate. That is a direct result of a 5-minute rule that limits debate.
Chairman Clemens,
when we need...
once again, you're off. If someone calls previous question, that the rule that has been in place in this House prevails. It's never changed. It's always been the rule that it has. Anybody at any time can call previous question if they do it in the proper manner, as we have done many times on the House floor. There was a list of people to have questions, but if anybody at that point calls previous question, then the clerk puts the vote up if there's objection. It didn't have anything to do with any time limits or anything like that. It was based on the next person on the list who was going to talk and they chose to call previous question. Chairman Clemens.
I would urge caution among this body about walking any further off this cliff on issues of such importance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative McKenzie, point of order.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my point of order is this, I don't know if this bill is properly before us. There's a $3.2 million fiscal note that I've not seen come through Finance Committee. So is this bill properly before us?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the fiscal memo on the amendment states that the bill as amended is not significant.
Representative McKenzie.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the tail end. I apologize.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the fiscal memo that was issued on the amendment is not significant.
Representative McKenzie. Representative McKenzie. Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to understand how any bill where the contents of the bill did not change. There's everything in the bill was in the bill before with a $3.2 million fiscal note, and how a simple amendment takes that fiscal note to zero. I'm trying to understand how that bill can be properly before us.
It's properly before us because the Senate amendment says it's not significant. And that's the job of fiscal review, which we all know makes determinations on all pieces of legislation, on all amendments that are filed that do put fiscal notes on it, positive or negative. Sometimes it puts not significant. Sometimes it says other impacts. But in this case, this amendment from fiscal review says not significant. Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just so a point of clarification on that, to be clear, is there any verbiage change from the Senate's version of the bill to the House bill?
Representative McKenzie, we are under point of order. We are about ready to vote on the bill, so that unfortunately can't be addressed. If you have a point of order, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is, would it be out of order to make a motion that we suspend the rules, that rule regarding the calling of the question? No, I'm asking about a rule, sir.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, since previous question has prevailed on this particular bill, you cannot make a motion to suspend the rules at this time.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, when would be the proper time to make the motion to suspend the rules in regards to calling point of order? I mean, regards to calling
previous question. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, it would depend on how the proper time would be before previous questions called if you wanted to try to suspend the rules for the previous question rule on a particular bill.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our clerk. But I'm looking at suspending the rules for the duration of the session on calling previous questions. when is the proper time to do that, so that we're not in this same space over and over again.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, something that would apply to the rest of session, similar to what's traditionally known as the flow motion, is usually taken up under unfinished business.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got a parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir.
Very simple. Isn't this how we got here in the first place?
That's a statement. You have a question for the Mr. Clerk? Representative Hardaway.
It's a question, sir. It's to you.
We're under point of order. You said you had a parliamentary question or procedure. That is not under that. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. I thought that we had some discussions about how debates would proceed and we would be a deliberative body. I thought that that's something that in fact, I thought I heard you say, and I'm trying to see if this is a violation of that. That's my inquiry.
Mr. Clerk,
So, thank you.
Can you read the previous question rule again for Representative Hardaway, please?
Mr. Speaker, the previous question shall only be admitted when demanded by 2/3 of the members present. It may be applied to the main motion, the main question, the amendment, or the main question, amendment to the amendment. If the question prevails on the motion, on the main motion, its effect shall be to preclude all future amendments and terminate all debate.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my question is, according to Article 2, Section 27 of the Constitution, we are allowed to have our dissent recorded into the record, especially when we feel that something a policy is injurious to the people. So will I be allowed to do that right now, according to our Constitution?
Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I will read that section of the Constitution. Any member of either house of the General Assembly shall have liberty to dissent from and protest against any act or resolve which he may think injurious to the public or to any individual, and to have the reason for this dissent entered on the journals. If the member wishes to submit a statement to the journal, they may. Similarly, our House rules state that if a member wants to put a reason for their vote into the journal, that will also be done. But an oral explanation of a member's vote is not permitted.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And point of order, Clerk, is that Rule 30 explanation of vote, and does it read as such? Any member may have written into the journal an explanation of such member's vote on any particular motion, resolution, or bill by presenting to the clerk an appropriate explanation in typewritten form. However, an oral explanation is not a matter of privilege and should not be allowed from the floor. Is that the appropriate rule?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that's correct.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the House is out of order and we're not deliberating and properly discussing.
Representative Jones, do you have a question for the clerk under procedural or parliamentary? Instead of making statement, you would have to address your question to the clerk. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, my question to the clerk is, Mr. Clerk, if a member introduces legislation and cannot even talk about it, cannot even defend their position, should they be a member in this chamber? If they can't even defend their legislation.
Jones, once again, that is not what we're on. It's parliamentary question, procedural question. If you would like to ask one of those two types of questions to the clerk about the rules or the Constitution, as the other representative did, that is fine. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Clerk, Is there a process to ensure that minority voice is heard in this chamber? The speaker, is it not the speaker's discretion to call who can be called next in line? And it's the speaker's discretion to call a member of his own party to call the question or to call a member of the minority party. Isn't it up to the discretion of the speaker to allow the minority party to speak? Is there a process by which our voice can be heard?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the speaker keeps a list of members as they request to speak. The speaker goes through that list. If someone on that list makes a motion, for example, previous question, and that prevails, then that's where the body is.
Representative Jones.
Mr. Clerk, is it the speaker's discretion to keep a list of members of the minority party to be heard before calling a member of his own party who will call the question? That's what we've seen all session. So is it not the speaker's discretion to keep a list of the minority voices who should be heard on this bill and who deserve to be heard for our districts? Is it not the discretion of Cameron Sexton to determine the order of calling people to speak?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, duties of members towards the speaker. No member shall be recognized by the speaker unless the member addresses the chair from such member's desk. In all cases, the member who shall rise first shall be entitled to speak first, but when two or more members shall rise at the same time, the speaker shall name the member who shall speak first. That is what our rules say.
Representative Jones.
Mr. Speaker, I implore you to bring order back to this House. If we can present a list of names of people who want to speak on a bill that is this substantial, banning racism in schools, teaching about racism in schools, can we have a process with you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Jones, no one submitted a list of any names of anybody, first of all. Second of all, we do call on the members who do raise their hands, and we put them in the order that they raise their hands. Sometimes people delay raising their hands and other people get ahead of them. That's the way it happens, unfortunately, sometimes. Representative Leatherwood was wanting to be recognized.
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Clerk. Going back to a previous question to the clerk, I was wondering, would the amendment from the Senate that rewrites this whole bill and it removes the requirement for certain reporting and it removes the requirement that certain mentoring takes place, couldn't this logically reduce the fiscal note to being not significant?
I got you. I got y'all. I got you. Representative Leatherwood, that's not a question that can be asked, but I think you take that under advisement with the finance chair if you'd like to have that question with her. All right. Looks like that's it. We're all voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 817, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Barrett, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
73, 25 nays.
Senate Bill 817, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare pass without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 514 by Chairman Terry relative to medical cannabis. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 329.
Chairman Terry moves substitute and form Senate Bill 329, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 329 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Terry moves passage of Senate Bill 329 on third and final consideration. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is the same as the Senate amendment and move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will allow for a qualifying patient to serve on the Cannabis Commission. I renew my motion.
Chairman Terry renews this motion. Let the journal reflect Representative McKenzie is excused. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the sponsor, there's currently already a cannabis commission, correct?
Chairman Terry.
That is correct.
Representative Dixie.
Has there been any actionable items that has come from this commission since it's been established that we've taken on any kind of legislation here in the House?
Chairman Terry.
Thank you for the question. They have put forth some recommendations, and we've reviewed those and some bills that have come through based off some of those recommendations. I don't remember which bills that we've debated, but they have put forth some recommendations.
Representative Dixie.
All right. Other thing is, how can we know when they meet? Where is it posted, or how can we find out when the commission meets?
Chairman Terry.
Thank you. I can get that to you from my office.
Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 329, vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Barrett, aye. McCalman, aye. Hazelwood, aye. Rudder, aye. Powell's, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 84, 8 nays.
Senate Bill 329, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsidered taken. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 940 by Representative Alexander and others relative to children. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to SB 0722.
Representative Alexander moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 722, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0722 on third and final consideration.
Representative Alexander moves passage of Senate Bill 722 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, which is Abrams law, requires all judges involved in child custody proceedings to complete at least 2 hours per year or 10 hours per 5 years of training and continuing education courses on domestic violence and child abuse. Requires the Administrative Office of the Courts to offer training and education courses either virtually or in person in conjunction with the annual meetings of the judicial conferences. It will be effective as of January 1, 2024. This bill just allows the judges to be experienced and educated on how to recognize abusive parents so we don't put children back in harm's way. That is my motion, sir, and I renew it.
Representative Alexander renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. We're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 722, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 722, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsidered taken. We'll call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 944 by Representative Alexander relative to abuse. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Alexander, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 979.
Representative Alexander moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 979, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 979 on third and final consideration.
Representative Alexander moves passage of Senate Bill 979 on third and final consideration. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is a financial abuse bill. It explains the definition of abuse when referencing domestic abuse or the Tennessee Adult Protection Act to include financial abuse as part of it. Clarifies that a person is not considered abused or neglected if they intentionally and willfully consent to engage in a religious method of healing in accordance with a recognized religious belief in lieu of medical treatment. I renew my motion.
Representative Alexander renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 979 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 979 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 379 by Representative Beck and others relative to protective services.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move passage of House Bill 379 on third and final consideration.
Representative Beck.
Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion for House Bill 379 on third and final consideration.
Call the First Amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill, so we're going to move to adopt and defer to our sponsor for the explanation.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, this House passed Dallas's law to protect our citizens and our visitors. This bill will change 3 things in that law. Dollywood and some of the private universities that have ABC license have asked us to make it where their security guards can carry pepper spray. Second, this makes a delineage between contracted security guards and employee security guards. Number 3, it makes clear that from hospitality, that hotels and other employees that make security sweeps are not considered to be security guards. And with that explanation, I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 379 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 86, 2 nays.
House Bill 379 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 987 by Representative Beck relative to judges. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 944.
Representative Beck moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 944, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill simply requires the Board of Judicial Conduct to notify the complainant of the results of their findings and gives the complainant 14 days to appeal to the Supreme Court. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Beck moves passage of Senate Bill 944 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I got ahead of myself. The explanation is that this bill allows mandates that the Judicial Conduct Board informs the complainant of their decisions and gives the complainant a right to appeal. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 944 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 88, 4 nays.
Senate Bill 944, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 647 by Representative Baum and others relative to medical records.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 647 on third and final consideration.
Representative Baum moves passage. Public Secretary, Mr. Clerk, call up first amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk. Representative Baum.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to have this bill re-referred to the Health Committee.
Without objection, re-referred to the Health Committee. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1088 by Representative Baum relative to the Tennessee Investment and Student Achievement Act.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1088 on third and final consideration.
Representative Baum moves passage. Public Secretary, Mr. Clerk, call up first amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill, so I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In our state's TISA funding formula, we offer an infrastructure stipend to LEAs that have grown by at least 2% in each of the past 3 years. The Department of Education and I are concerned that COVID may have affected the growth rate during some of those years, and so this bill provides LEAs a second way to become eligible for these infrastructure stipends. It does this by considering growth in 3 years that were not affected by COVID. It eliminates 2 academic years that we believe were most impacted by COVID. I renew my motion.
Representative Baum renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
First of all, Representative Baum, I just want to say thank you. Second of all, this bill, which I support, I just want to encourage our colleagues to take a look at the real need for infrastructure investment by the state of Tennessee, not only to this degree, but to the others, because what we have seen is a lot of fixed costs associated with the policies pulling money out of our traditional public schools into other private entities. And we need to do a better job as a state of Tennessee investing and covering those costs like we're constitutionally required to do for our traditional public schools in Tennessee. So again, I just want to say publicly, thank you. And thank you for this legislation.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Bill 1088 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
House Bill 1088, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most for considered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 24 by Representative Freeman and others, relative to sexual assault evidence collection kits. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 0014.
Representative Freeman moves substitute conform Senate Bill 14, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0014 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage of Senate Bill 14 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment's in the Senate bill. Therefore, I move to withdraw House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment 1.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires the TBI to provide quarterly updates on the Bureau's efforts to hire and train employees within the Forensic Services Division. It also encourages them to get us to a time where we can get all these kits tested within 60 days of receipt. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 14, vote aye. When the bell rings, those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Senate Bill 14, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most for considered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 685 by Representative Freeman, relative to highway safety.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 685 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and to defer to the sponsor to explain.
Chairman Howell moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 2.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Howell moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 2 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires the Tennessee Department of Transportation to identify locations around the state and local government roads where injuries to bicyclists and pedestrians are elevated in comparison to the statewide average. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 685 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 81, 11 nays, 1 present, non voting.
House Bill 685 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Most for considered table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 686 by Representative Freeman and others, relative to victim advocates communications. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 1205.
Representative Freeman moves substitute conform to Senate Bill 1205, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1205 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage of Senate Bill 1205 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment's in the Senate bill. Therefore, I move to withdraw House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment 1.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would prohibit advocates from being examined in judicial, legislative, or administrative proceedings regarding any communications between the advocate and the victim unless disclosure is required by law or otherwise authorized in the section. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1205, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Has any member wishes to change their vote? Sapiki, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays, one present, not voting.
Senate Bill 1205, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsider table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 897 by Chairman Hurt relative to K-12 education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Chairman Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1070.
Chairman Hurt moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 1070, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1070 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hurt moves passage of Senate Bill 1070 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Chairman Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill addresses the problem of the shortage of PE teachers in elementary schools, and it is permissive. It allows a director of schools or a charter school to request the Commissioner of Education to issue an endorsement exemption to a licensed teacher to teach PE in an elementary school. The endorsement exemption would be valid only until June 30th following the date it was granted. The director must certify the Commissioner that they are unable to find a qualified teacher, and the Commissioner has complete discretion over whether they grant an exemption. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hurt renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1070, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Camper, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 1070, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most reconsider table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 962 by Representative Slater and others relative to secondary education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Representative Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 838.
Representative Slater moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 838, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 838 on third and final consideration.
Representative Slater moves passage of Senate Bill 838 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The same as the Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to create a high school equivalent to the CLEP test used in post-secondary education. If this bill is passed, it will allow high school students to demonstrate proficiency on an exam in certain subjects and receive credit for the course. I renew my motion.
Representative Slater renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 838, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Freeman, aye. Cochran, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Senate Bill 838, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsider table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 995 by Representative Stevens relative to corporal punishment for students with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Representative Stevens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 972.
Representative Stevens moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 972, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 972 on third and final consideration.
Representative Stevens moves passage of Senate Bill 972 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Stevens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill comes from the Tennessee Disability Coalition to help ensure that students with disabilities are not falling through the cracks. and receiving corporal punishment for behavior that manifests as a result of their disabilities. The bill puts a procedure in place to consider screening children for disabilities before corporal punishment is used, and that includes parental involvement. If the student does have a disability, then the corporal punishment could still be used if the parents opt in, which is current law. The bill does not prohibit corporal punishment. The bill does not take away an LEA's ability to make its own rules about corporal punishment. It does help ensure that students with disabilities are not falling through the cracks. So with this explanation, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Stevens renews the motion. Representative Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick question. A year or two ago, this body passed the Teachers Discipline Act that gives the teacher the ability to permanently remove an unruly or disruptive student from the classroom. I've read the bill. I don't believe it does, but I don't think anything in your bill overwrites that previous bill. Is that correct?
Representative Stevens.
That is my understanding.
Chairman Sapicki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is an issue that I've been working on. I really appreciate the sponsors legislation, continuing to work on this. Several years ago, studies found that students with disabilities were actually subjected to corporal punishment at a much higher rate than other students. And I want you to think about that. Students with disabilities were subjected to corporal punishment at higher rates than normal students. That can set back those students tremendously. And, we are working as a state when it's important that we support all students, especially those students with disabilities, and subjecting them to corporal punishment can have multiple negative consequences. And so this is an important piece of legislation, and I appreciate it. I'm happy to sign on. I'd ask all my colleagues to vote for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stevens.
Thank you. I renew my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Stevens renews his motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 972, vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast a vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
Senate Bill 972, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed by objection. Most research table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 273, but Chairman Terry, relative to health, Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 221.
Chairman Terry moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 221, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 221 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Terry moves passage of Senate Bill 221 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill, and I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill allows for the Board of Medical Examiners to have input on their medical consultant. With that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Terry renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 221 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 87, 2 nays.
Senate Bill 221 having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare passed by objection. Most reconsidered table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 616 by Representative Travis, relative to vehicles that haul logs or pulpwood. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to House Senate Bill 1357.
Representative Travis moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 1357, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1357 on third and final consideration.
Representative Travis moves passage of Senate Bill 1357 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as the Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the House, I would say something that shortly after 7 a.m. on the morning of November the 10th, 2021, Grace Mitchell, 17, collided with the rear of a logging truck on State Highway 111. The collision resulted in Grace's untimely death. So we've brought this bill today. And I've worked with Sequatchie County High School. And this is what the bill says. It has been amended to say, requires a motor vehicle of trailered transporting a load of logs or pulpwood that protrudes at least 4 feet beyond the end of the body or the bed of the motor vehicle or a trailer to have the following secure affixed to the end of the projected. I'm sorry, it's been amended. This says that that the trailer will have amended strobe or blinking lights and 2 red or fluorescent orange flags affixed to the end of the project load as that trailer is loaded. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Travis renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 1357 vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Camper, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 85, 2 nays, 3 present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 1357 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 619 by Representative Travis, relative to the Department of Children's Services.
Representative Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 0619 on third and final consideration.
Representative Travis moves passage. Public Secretary, Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Defer to the sponsor for further explanation. Move to adopt.
Chairman Farmer moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill says the Commissioner of DCS shall notify the committing court at least 15 days prior to the proposed discharge of a child. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Travis renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 619 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
House Bill 619 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed by objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1109 by Representative Travis and others relative to custodial interference. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1319.
Representative Travis moves substitute form Senate Bill 1319 without objection. So ordered. Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1319 on third and final consideration.
Representative Travis moves passage of Senate Bill 1319 on third and final consideration. By second, Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Travis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill adds the offense of the custodian interference of hiding of a child within or outside the state, knowing that the child has been placed in the custody of the Department of Children's Services pursuant to a protective custody order or an emergency custody order entered by a court. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Travis renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 1319 vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. As every member cast their vote, any member which change their vote? Capley, no. Sapicki, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 74, 17 nays.
Senate Bill 1319 and received constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed by objection. Most reconsider tabled. Let the journal reflect Representatives Johnson, Burkhart, Glenn, and Gillespie are excused. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 120 by Representative Darby, a resolution to honor the memories of Chance Black and Zachary Grooms and request that TWRA to direct a marker to memorialize the lives of these two outstanding young men.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR 0120.
Representative Darby moves adoption. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll defer to the sponsor for further explanations. We move to adopt.
Chairman Keesling moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I hate to be in front of you all today. I've requested the TWRA erect a marker at Manus Swamp Refuge in Weakley County in remembrance of Zach Grooms and Chance Black. Speaker?
Representative Darby.
Yes, sir. I'm probably out of order here.
Okay.
But I would like this body to honor the families of Zach and Chance Black. We got the family of the Blacks there, Mark and April, and their son Cody, and the parents of Zach Grooms, Ricky and Tina Grooms, and his brother Petey and Andrea Grooms. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Representative Darby.
And Mr. Speaker, could I ask the clerk to read the resolution?
Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 120 by Representative Darby, a resolution to honor the memories of Chance Black and Zachary Grooms and request the TWRA to erect a marker to memorialize the lives of these two outstanding young men. Whereas on the morning of January 25th, 2021, Chance Black and Zachary Grooms were senselessly murdered at Reelfoot Lake in Obion County, and whereas the two sportsmen were hunting during the final week of Tennessee's duck season when the tragic event occurred, and whereas born on May 5th, 1995, Zachary Paul Grooms grew up in Greenfield in the Shafter community, a graduate of Bethel University, where he played on the baseball team and archery teams. He worked as a watermelon farm manager and had aspirations to become a police officer. And whereas Chance Lee Black was born on May 2nd, 1994, to Mark and April Black of Greenfield, a passionate hunter and fisherman who worked in the gun department at Final Flight Outfitters in Union City and planned to pursue a career in law enforcement as a state trooper. And whereas dearly loved by their family and friends, Zachary Grooms and Chance Black leave behind an indelible legacy of integrity and probity in public life, compassion and loyalty in private life, and diligence and dedication in all their chosen endeavors. And whereas the members of this General Assembly are proud to honor the brief yet well-lived lives of these two young men, now therefore be resolved by the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we honor the memories of Zachary Grooms and Chance Black, reflecting fondly upon their impeccable character and their stalwart commitment to living the examined life with courage and conviction. Be it further resolved that we request the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency to erect a marker at Manus Swamp Refuge in Weakley County in remembrance of the lives of these two outstanding young sportsmen, Zachary Grooms and Chance Black.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I renew my motion.
Representative Darby renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 120 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
House Joint Resolution 120, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. The most for series table. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized. Of Washington. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to place SJR 174 in the next available space on the next available regular calendar. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have some messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 1002, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject amended and passed by the Senate.
Monday's message calendar, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 1225, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject amended and passed by the Senate.
Monday's message calendar. Leader Lamberth.
Members, I have a very important announcement that I think you'll all be interested in. On Monday, the flow motion will be presented to you for your consideration. So the end is nigh. We have much work yet to do. But at this time of the year, for our new members in the chamber, the flow motion does suspend certain rules that will be on your desk for you to analyze and debate and vote on. But it is basically allows for bills to move through committees at somewhat of a more rapid pace so that we can, at some juncture in the future, get the budget on the House floor, the budget documents, any other bills that need to be passed this year. Again, much is still under consideration, but wanted to give you a heads up that the flow motion does anticipate we will have that on your desk for consideration on Monday. Thank you very much.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was actually trying to speak on unfinished business, actually. But I guess we can talk about announcements. Members, the Seersucker Caucus will convene on next Thursday. Next Thursday, the Seersucker Caucus will convene. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a Davidson County delegation meeting today in 8D. We'll do it immediately after session. We'll have the ECD commissioner as our guest. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hicks of Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, if I can have your attention just for a second about a schedule change for next week. Just so you know, Finance, Ways, and Means Subcommittee, we will meet on Tuesday, April the 18th at 9 a.m. in House Hearing Room 1. So again, that's Tuesday in House Hearing Room 1 at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, your 2023 Statement of Interest is due April the 15th. This disclosure is filed with the Tennessee Ethics Commission. If you have any questions or problems, see Doug Himes. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you weren't a part of the General Assembly, a couple of years ago, we moved the Tennessee State Fair to the Wilson County Fairgrounds and merged it with the Wilson County Fair. And we have allocated some funds over the last couple of years for buildings. And one of those buildings, we're having a grand opening on Monday. It's the Made in Tennessee building. I would like to invite each of you to come. It's going to be at 1 p.m. and it's in Lebanon at the fairgrounds, just right off of exit 239. And if you're planning to come, if you want to maybe email me or shoot me a text, there may be some of us gathering for lunch before. So I hope you can make it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Full Finance will be meeting on Tuesday immediately following Finance Sub.
Leader Camper.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members, I don't see him in the chamber, but I just want to take this moment to welcome Representative Justin Pearson back to the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further announcements? Representative Dixie.
I didn't get a chance to do this under welcome and honoring, but with the Jack and Jill of America Corporation, some of the students served as pages today. So can you just give them a hand for serving us and helping us today?
Any further announcements? Mr. Clerk has an announcement.
Mr. Speaker, the Delayed Bills Committee will meet immediately following session in the Speaker's conference room. That's the Delayed Bills Committee in the Speaker's conference room immediately after session.
Next order. Oh, hang on. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. Can you explain what that Late Bills Committee is all about, who's on it, and how it operates?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, for bills that were filed after the bill filing deadline, those bills are referred to the Delayed Bills Committee pursuant to Rule 77. And that is, the committee is laid out by rule. It takes a unanimous consent of the majority leader, the minority leader, and the speaker for that bill to come out of Delayed Bills Committee and be introduced.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Well, roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 92 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 4 p.m. on Monday, April 17th, 2023.
Without objection, the House stands recessed till 4 p.m. on Monday, April 17th, 2023.